do you do when someone hurts you or causes you offence? Well, chances are you do what everyone else does. You hold on to it and you think about how you can get your own back. You want to get even. You want to balance the score. Now, if you want to get even when someone has hurt you, then stay tuned. In this message, I'm going to share with you the most effective way that you can do this. And as I'm sure you've guessed by now, it's not what you might expect. Now, if there's something that the church, that the followers of Jesus should be world leaders in, it's how we one another. Now, don't take my word for it. Listen to what Jesus said. A new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. The sign that there's a community of Jesus followers somewhere isn't the songs they sing, it's not the programs or activities they run, it's not the building they meet in, it's not even the things they know or believe. The sign, according to Jesus, that a church is present in a community is the way they love one another. And the one another is not just the people on the inside of the church, it's anyone they come into contact with. Now, we see this through the way Jesus lived his life. We see him demonstrating this love to all people. And he passes this mandate, this command, onto his followers, onto his church. We are called, we are commanded to love one another, to love the people we come into contact with, the person in front of us. And we're to love them as Jesus has loved us. Now, it couldn't be any clearer. It's simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Living this out is really hard to do. And that's why we're talking about it. This is a big deal to Jesus, and it should be a big deal to us. But if we're honest, most, if not all of us, have some way to go if we're to be known for loving one another well. It requires a selfless and sacrificial approach. It requires us to take ourselves off centre stage, to take ourselves out of the spotlight. It requires us to recognise and realise that we're not the centre of the universe, that the world does not revolve around us and our wants and our desires and our needs. It requires us to live our lives in a way that puts other people first. And if you're a Jesus follower, your number one priority is to love God. Jesus told us and showed us how we do this. We love God through loving others. You cannot love God without loving others. So if you want to love God well, you have to love others well. The two can't be separated. So we're exploring 3 ways in which we can do this. 3 aspects of life that give us the opportunity to be world leaders in one anothering. There are also areas of life that most of us struggle to show love. Now, the previous message focused on how we do this with our words. We are to hold in and push out. Hold in words that are destructive, that are harmful. Hold in words that seek to hurt and destroy. And instead, we're to push out words that build up, words that benefit those who listen. That's how we love one another well with our words. When we think about how we use them to benefit those who hear, rather than just ourselves. And in this message, we're going to explore how we love one another well when we've experienced pain or conflict with someone. Now, we tend to remember it and hold on to it, and it impacts the way that we think about or behave towards that person. In short, we hold a grudge against them. Now, a grudge is simply getting mad and staying mad at someone. And we've all experienced it. We've all done it. Somebody does something that hurts us or offends us. Perhaps they say something behind our back, or they constantly leave us out of invitations. They push us to the side of the social group. Maybe it's a snarky comment that they made on social media or a throwaway comment that they said to us. The result is that we're hurt, we're offended, and we get mad. Our natural response is to hold on to anger and to pain, and we pick it up and we carry it around with us. And we allow it to influence the way that we think about that individual. Now, that's a grudge. If you were to Google what the word means, you'd find this definition: a persistent feeling of ill will or resentment resulting from a past insult or injury. Now, I know we all know what a grudge is. We all have them. We all have held on to them. Sometimes for days and weeks, often it's months and even years. And in many cases, we hold on to a grudge long after we've forgotten what the original cause was. I've seen this at play in all aspects of life, at school, at work, at home, even in churches. I've seen it in my own family. An auntie or an uncle who won't speak to another auntie or uncle. And it causes a split and a division that doesn't just impact them, but the whole family. The thing about grudges is they don't work. Nothing gets better as a result of them. The thing that first caused the grudge doesn't get dealt with, and the pain it caused isn't eased. In fact, it's often made worse. The wound gets bigger and bigger. The problem gets bigger and bigger. The gap between you gets bigger and bigger. Another problem with a grudge is that it rarely stays in its box. The grudge doesn't just impact your relationship with that person, it begins to spill over into other aspects of life too. It impacts your mood, your work, your sleep. The reality is, the more you hold on to a grudge, the more it has a hold on you. And we hold a grudge because someone has caused us pain or offence. They've wronged us, and our natural tendency is to wrong them back. We want to get even. But is there another way? Let's take a look at something that Paul wrote to the early church about this. Now, these words aren't just empty words. It's not just nice advice that isn't based in reality. Paul is writing into a context that's had its fair share of conflict and division. He's writing to the church in Rome, who are on the blink of splitting over two main ideologies. The Jewish Christians wanted everyone to adopt their Jewish traditions and their principles as part of their new faith in Jesus. Whereas the non-Jewish Christians didn't want to have to go along with things like not eating certain foods and having to be circumcised. This created a lot of tension, and things were said and done that shouldn't have been said or done. And I think it's fair to say that lots of the people that Paul is writing to were carrying grudges around with them. Let's take a look at what he has to say. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Now, this is so profound, and it's life-changing because our natural tendency is to do back to people what they've done to us. When we've been hurt or offended, we naturally want to hurt or offend. We want to get revenge. We want to get even. We think to ourselves that if we can pay them back, then it will be okay because at least we're square. Now, does that ever happen? What happens when you repay evil with evil? What happens when you repay hurt with hurt, or insult with insult, or offence with offence? Well, the other person comes to their senses and realises that they were in the wrong. They break down in front of you, begging for forgiveness and restoration. Has that ever happened? No. They repay evil for evil. They repay hurt for hurt. So now it's evil for evil for evil. They retaliate against what you've done. And what do? Well, you want to get even, so you repay evil for evil for evil for evil. And so we continue in this endless cycle of grief and destruction. And Paul tells us to break the chain, to not repay evil for evil. Do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Now, that's a confusing statement because it can seem that Paul is telling us that we should do what they think is right. The problem there is we all have varying degrees of what is right. And this isn't what Paul is saying here. He means do things in a way that everyone can see that what you do is right. Be upfront and honest. Be honourable and trustworthy. Whatever you do when it comes to responding to people who have hurt you, do it out in the open, not behind someone's back. Now, let me take a step back. The reason we tend to hold a grudge is because someone has done something to us. The reason we repay evil with evil is because someone has done something evil to us. They've acted in a way that's unkind, that has caused us pain. We've been wronged, and we want to settle the score. Surely we have a right to get even. Now, that's exactly what Paul is talking about here. Don't repay evil with evil. The point is that we have been wronged. In those moments, the way we love one another is to not retaliate, is to not hit back, is to break the cycle. Look at what Paul goes on to say. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Now, when it comes to what is dependent in you, when it comes to what you say and what you do, aim to live at peace. Now, notice who Paul says we should aim to live at peace with. He doesn't just say the people we like. He doesn't just say the people who are on our side or the people who haven't hurt us. He says live at peace with everyone. Folks, that's the standard that Jesus has set for us if we're his followers. As far as it depends on us, we should aim to be at peace with everyone. That includes the people who have hurt or wronged us. Now, that won't always be possible. They might not want to reciprocate this. They might want to hold that grudge or say those things. That is beyond our control. But how we act, how we respond, is in our control. This is what Jesus was talking about when he set that new command that we should be known for how we love one another. This is what we're called to do. This is what we're commanded to do if we're his followers. Now, if you want to go deep in your faith, if you want to be mature in your faith, do this. The problem is we want to respond. We want to react. That's why a bit later on, Paul shows us how we can respond. He shows us how we are to react when someone causes us pain or offense. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Now, when we give in to that natural tendency to repay evil with evil, we get overcome by evil. We find ourselves thinking and saying and doing things that we know we shouldn't do. We're not in control anymore. We can't break this cycle with evil. We get caught in it. In a sermon about loving your enemies, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, "Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Now, he was talking about the same thing that Paul is talking about in these verses. Don't repay evil with evil. It doesn't get us anywhere. In fact, it makes things worse. Now, if anyone had the right to repay evil with evil, it was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the people he spoke up for. The hate and darkness he is talking about is far more than a careless word or an offhand comment. It's centuries of oppression and abuse. To people who've been told their entire life that they're not good enough and never will be good enough purely because of the colour of their skin. To the people who had been marginalised, ostracised. To the people who'd been separated and segregated. To the people who'd been beaten and broken simply because their skin was a different colour. To them, Martin Luther King Jr. stands on the shoulders of Paul and says, don't repay evil with evil. Overcome it with good. Now, if he can do that through the things he faced, surely I can let go of my hurt and my offence. Surely I can overcome the evil I face with good. So what does this look like in reality? How do we do this? How do we break the cycle of retaliation and revenge? How do we overcome evil with good? Well, it comes down to a conscious and intentional choice to forego what we are due in order to seek what is best for the person in front of us, the person who has caused us pain. It's a conscious and intentional choice to repay hurt with blessing. You said that hurtful thing about me. I'm going to return it with saying something good about you. You've gone out of your way to do something that hurts me. I will go out of my way to do something that helps you. When you think bad of me, I will think good of you. When you talk down to me or about me, I will talk you up. When you get in my way, when you seek to make my life harder, I will seek to serve you. If you want to get even, do this. Paul goes on to quote something that Solomon wrote in the book of Proverbs. If your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. See, when we repay evil with good, one of two things will happen. It will either diffuse the situation and create an opportunity for healing and restoration, or it won't. What happens depends on them, not you. If our natural unchecked desire is to get even, well, there's no better way than returning evil for good. It will infuriate them beyond measure if they don't want to take those steps to seek restoration. Now, let me get you a better reason why you should do this, why you should choose to overcome evil with good. Simply because Jesus has done this for you. In the midst of darkness and hate and evil, light and life and love shone out. Jesus allowed himself to be crucified as an act of love and forgiveness for the very people who were crucifying him. He cried out to his Father, "It's okay. Forgive them." He knew they were caught in this cycle of evil for evil for evil. And Jesus broke that chain. He overcome its power through this ultimate act of love. And he did this for you and for me. It was also because of our selfishness and our sin that Jesus was willing to give up his life for us in our place. He repaid our evil with his good. That's why he says to us, a new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. If you're a Jesus follower, this is what you've signed up for. But if you're anything like me, you realize you need buckets of help if this is going to be possible. The good news is that Jesus will help you, but he won't do it for you. In those times when you're tempted to repay evil with evil, cry out to him. Ask him for help, for strength, and then act on the help and the strength that he gives you. He won't do it for you, but he will do it with you. Our challenge isn't that we don't know what we should do, it's that we don't want to do what we know we should do. But just imagine the impact this would make on our lives and our community if we did this. Just imagine the change we would see if we took these words seriously. My challenge to you is to find that person that's been on your mind as you've listened to this message. Find that person who's hurt you. Pray for them and love them. Repay hurt with help. Seek to love them and bless them instead of seeking to get even. Break the cycle. Repay evil with good and see what happens in you and in them.